Good morning. I want to talk today about the upcoming lunar month that starts on, let's see, I believe June 6th, and I think it goes to July 5th, from one new moon to the next new moon. So let me see if I can share my screen and we can get started. And I just need to get rid of a few panels so I can see what I'm doing here. So just give me a minute as usual. Okay, and I think we're ready to start now. So yes, indeed, this is the lunar month from June 6th through July 5th. Okay, first let's look at a quick review of the last lunar month from May 7th to June 6th. And last time I said tensions in the world will remain heightened through mid-May and a little beyond as a result of a semi-square between Saturn and Pluto. And among other things, is observed that casualties and tensions have ramped up as Israel has moved into Rafah, and pro-Palestinian campus protests were very prevalent in the first half of May. But since deaths in Rafah have continued beyond mid-May, not everything is a result of just the Saturn-Pluto square. For instance, on May 29th, the planets Chiron and Mars were conjunct, and that can also cause some wounding. And let's see, this is June 2nd. While I'm recording this, so May 29th has come and gone, and I believe there was a lot of wounding in Rafah, another excess of deaths of civilians. Okay, now the second half of May will see more optimism, though, as a result of a sextile between Jupiter and Neptune. And I've written, I don't know if this has happened, but info.ndr.com does a regular NDR crowd sentiment poll that measures people's optimism, and I'll check back periodically to see when they have the results for May. So, we don't really have data yet that could show that people um, became more optimistic in the second half of May, but I will point out that recently President Biden put forth uh, a deal for peace and between Israel and Gaza, and it seems to be getting some good reception out there. So, yes, there is perhaps some uh, tendency or reason to be a little bit more optimistic right now. Okay, what else? I said a conjunction of Mars with Chiron the last week of May, however, could manifest as more wounding for the world. The best outcome, though, would not be violence, but the rise of true spiritual warriors who seek enlightenment over war. A lesser outcome would be false spiritual warriors who are driven by religious or political fanaticism. And certainly more civilian deaths in Rafah occurred during this conjunction. On May 30th, it was reported that at least 53 uh, across Gaza were killed, and more European countries are formally recognizing a Palestinian state. There are certainly conflicts in other parts of the world, Ukraine and Russia, and uh, civil wars here and there, but the big focus still seems to be on the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Okay, then I wrote that an emerging mini grand trine between Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune that culminates in early June will bring more technological growth, vision, optimism, and humanitarian concerns to the forefront this month. And in response, I've said that violence in Gaza has heightened the call for humanitarian aid and resulted in groups of countries calling for change. However, the role of Hamas in perpetuating this conflict often seems to be ignored. Now, some technological advancements that were in the news were one, wider use of artificial intelligence, two, the rise of generative AI that can create new content on its own, and three, advances in the efficiency of solar cells, and four, the convergence of AI and quantum computing. A lot of the technology news has surrounded artificial intelligence, which seems to be growing by leaps and bounds. Okay, now, this is my overview for the lunar month from June 6th to July 5th. And first, let me just say a few remarks off of the cuff. Uh, this month, well, first off, this is just an overview for the entire world. How everyone will be affected to one extent or another by this lunar month. If we look at specific countries or specific individuals, their outcomes can be different, either better or worse than these general influences. And as far as the general influences go, it's neither going to be the best of times nor the worst of times. There aren't going to be a lot of uh, easy aspects like sextiles and trines this month, but there will be a lot of somewhat tense aspects, but they're going to be involving mostly inner planets. They're going to come and go rather quickly. All the squares or oppositions or semi-squares or sesquiquadrates. And there's going to be a fair number of inconjunct aspects. Those are the semisextiles and the quincunxes. And they are aspects which promote change and adjustment to situations. So, in many respects, I see this lunar month is going to involve maybe a lot of jockeying for position here or there, trying to get certain things you want, certain concessions from others. And then at the same time, there are going to be pressures for you and others to make adjustments to changing conditions. Nothing really great, nothing really bad. Okay, let's see what I wrote. A strong sextile between Neptune and Pluto will endure throughout the lunar month, and it will result in more transcendent thoughts and inspirations for many. And this is a very good thing. It's something that a lot of people will not be consciously aware of. But whenever Neptune and Pluto make a sextile with one another, the vision of Neptune is empowered by Pluto. And this creates something in the background which is better and more transcendent. And people born under this type of aspect, when they grow up, they're going to be a little bit more transcendent in their thinking, a little bit more beyond this world, if you will, and forward thinking. And I know that because I was born with Pluto at 19 degrees Leo, making a strong sextile to Neptune at 19 degrees Libra. And people like me, we grew up to become the hippies of the late 60s and 70s. Okay, the lunar month will begin with frustration and irritation with the thoughts of others as Saturn squares the Sun, Moon, and Venus, while Pluto makes a sesquiquadrate to the same. So we're starting this new month with some irritations. They're not going to last long, but that kind of sets the stage. It's, not everything is perfectly harmonious, but it's not completely broken either. Okay, however, at the same time, a small triangle between Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune at the start of the lunar month will help release some tensions and promote higher thinking. Uh, Today, on June 2nd, when I'm recording this, Jupiter will make an exact trine to Pluto, and they'll both be making a sextile to Neptune. And this is a very beneficial aspect. This brings in higher thoughts, more vision uh, to help us accomplish good things in the future. So, uh, this is happening right before the start of the new lunar month, and it will still be in effect on June 6th. So, there are good influences too that may carry on throughout the month, even though at the surface we have these quick moving irritations. As I say next, much of the month will consist of fast moving irritations, hard aspects involving inner planets, and pressures for change in conjunct aspects. Now, also, the first half of the lunar month will have a focus on ideas, Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Gemini. And the second half of the lunar month will focus more on security, Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Cancer. Okay, here's a quick look at transits for Mars on out for the lunar month. And the orb of influence here is about 2 degrees. When I show you a chart, I'm using my usual 7.5 degree orbs. And on some other graphic displays, which show when certain things become exact, there may be just a 1 degree orb being used. Okay, but Neptune sextile Pluto, that is going to be in the backdrop for the entire lunar month, and that will bring in some more vision, which will be empowered. So that's a good thing. Okay, now here is the new moon on June 6th, and I'm going to go through each of these aspects. And let me say, what I'm not really looking at so much are aspects involving the moon, uh, because in the context of the entire month, they are very fleeting. I'm also not going to look at aspects formed by Mercury, because they usually last a day. So I'm really looking at aspects involving Sun and then Venus on out. Aspects involving Venus usually last at least 2 days, sometimes 3. Okay, so also as we go through this, you're not going to see a whole lot of blue, which indicates sextiles and trines. You will see a lot of red for hard aspects and a lot of green for inconjuncts. So we start out with Sun, Moon, Venus making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto. Now, Pluto is in Aquarius, and it's moved out of Capricorn, where power is vested in individuals. It's in Aquarius, where it's vested in groups. And these can be good groups or bad groups. You can have enlightened uh, groups working together for peace. You can have mob rule. That would be a bad group. Uh, but the sesquiquadrate, it shows some irritation here. Sun, Moon, and Venus, they are in Gemini. Gemini is into thinking about stuff, abstract thought. Pluto in Aquarius, that is power residing with groups. And there is a little bit of irritation between, let's say, what people are thinking and what the powers that be actually want us to do. We also have Saturn making a pretty strong square to Sun, Moon, and Venus at the start of this lunar month. And we're going to see a lot of things like squares between these planets in Pisces and these planets in Gemini from time to time throughout this month. And uh, Saturn in Pisces, it's trying to take a vision and make it concrete. And Sun, Moon, and Venus in Gemini, they're at odds with that vision. They're having their own ideas. So there's some difficulty in getting these visions implemented. And I think we're seeing that played out a lot uh, in Gaza, in this conflict between Israel and Hamas. And if I just go back to this first one, this can represent United Nations, European nations, other groups of nations that they want certain things to happen. They want humanitarian aid and so forth. But it's at odds with what uh, the groups involved in the conflict may be thinking about. And now there are these visions that are trying to be made concrete, but again, it's somewhat at odds with what people are actually thinking. Okay, next aspect to look at is Mars semisextile Neptune. Uh, Semisextiles, that's an aspect of 30 degrees, and the quincunx aspect of 50 degrees, we call those inconjuncts because they happen when planets are in signs that have nothing to do with one another. They're different elements, they're different modalities. Uh, as a result, when you have any sort of inconjunct aspect, usually some kind of change has to occur. Now, most of the adjustment, I think, occurs when you have an aspect of 150 degrees of quincunx. When it's a semisextile, you're either sort of getting started with a new cycle or just sort of wrapping up an old cycle. In this case, this is the waxing semisextile between Neptune and Mars, so things are just getting started. So when Mars was conjunct Neptune in Pisces, there was some sort of vision here, and now there's some attempt to make it a reality more concrete. It could be either a good vision or a bad vision, and there's probably some of both. With Mars and Aries, it could be a little bit more militaristic vision, or it could be some sort of vision for enacting, achieving independence and freedom of some sort. Now, one thing I also want to point out is Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces. Whenever a planet is in the 29th degree of a sign, we call that the anaretic degree. And that is when the cycle represented by just that sign is about to end. And whenever something gets to the end of its cycle or the end of its life, things tend to break down. Just think of a person dying, their body is breaking down. Uh, Toxins and other things are being released. Things are not working properly. Uh, Harmful stuff that perhaps has been suppressed can now come out at this time. Now, Neptune is going to spend really the entire summer at 29 degrees Pisces, this anaretic degree. And so this is where some of the bad side of Neptune and Pisces can come out. And that can be things like misinformation and delusional thinking, assassinations, among other things. So we might expect to see more of that sort of stuff this summer. Also, it's worth noting that when Neptune was at this anaretic degree last, uh, in fact, the day before it went into Aries, that is when the American Civil War broke out, when Confederate soldiers fired in Fort Sumter. And let's see. In the USA chart, I usually use the July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Resolution for Independence. I think that works a little bit better than July 4th charts, but as I always point out, they both work. The creation of America wasn't a single event, but a series of events. But using that July 2nd chart, when Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces, it's making a strong square to Venus at 0 degrees Cancer in that July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Declaration of Independence by the Continental Congress. And uh, when it was making that square, that's when war broke out. Now, the next time that Neptune was in any degree making a square with Venus in that USA chart, um, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and we got involved with World War II. Okay, so this could be a tricky time, tricky summer for the world and for America. Now, this is one of the few beneficial things we'll see happen this month. We have Sun and Venus making a sextile to Chiron, and actually, I could put the moon in there. I just left it out because I don't talk about the fast-moving moon so much in these monthly reports. But let's say Sun, Venus, and Moon, they're all making a sextile to Chiron. Beginning this new moon with Venus conjunct the Sun, that is one of the more beneficial things. It adds some kindness to our thoughts this month, in spite of the sesquiquadrate from Pluto, the square from Saturn. And making a sextile to Chiron, this is all going to bring out the more beneficial side of Chiron. So we may see a little bit more wounding and joy and transcendence this month. And as I've already mentioned, as I am recording this, Biden has put forth a peace plan for Israel and Gaza that might get accepted. Hamas is apparently looking upon it favorably. Okay, now we also have Mars square Pluto at this time, and that's going to become exact within a few days. Unfortunately, this works against peace. Uh, Mars in Aries wants to do what it wants to do, and it's not so concerned with what the powers that be, those groups who are now holding power represented by Pluto and Aquarius. Mars in Aries is not necessarily wanting to follow their direction. So we could start this lunar month with some additional conflict around the world. And then we have Venus semisextile Uranus. Again, this is a waxing semisextile, so something is just getting started. Back when Venus was conjunct Uranus, this is in the sign of Taurus, which has to do with money, possessions, finances, things we value. And so there may have been some creative endeavors that had a financial benefit that were envisioned at that time. And at this point, with Venus and Gemini, the sign of ideas, making a semisextile to Uranus, this is when things may start getting off the ground. Okay, now over here, you can see the exact dates when and times when things are going to happen. These times are set for Scottsdale, Arizona, where I live. But the important thing for you probably is going to be the date over here on the side. And we can see on uh, June 11th, that is when Mars is going to be exactly square Pluto. At the same time, that is when Venus is exactly sextile Chiron. So we have a bit of a mixed bag. Tension, aggression on the one hand, and kindness and healing on the other hand. So both those influences will be at work. Sun will make a sextile to Chiron the next day on June 12th. So 11th and 12th, we could see some good things, but also possibility of more aggression. Uh, let's see, we have Sun and Venus exactly sesquiquadrate, Pluto on the 6th, the day of the new moon. And on the 8th, Venus is going to be making that square to Saturn. So that can be a day of frustration. Sun makes its square to Saturn on the 9th. So a couple of frustrating days here. Now, uh, looking over here, I have things color coded: red for hard aspects, green for inconjuncts, blue for easy aspects. And this sort of light brown arrow here, it represents that on June 8th, Mars is going to go into Taurus. So that will represent a shift. Mars and Aries, it's more independent, more oriented toward taking action. Mars is the planetary ruler of Aries. That could also lead to more aggression, more conflict. But when Mars goes into Taurus, the emphasis is more on consolidating your gains, holding on to what possessions you have. Okay, and here is another graphical display showing when aspects start, become exact, and when they end. And the orb being used for these is, I believe, just 1 degree. And we can see that, let's see, from June 10th through 12th, uh, that's when we should be most concerned about Mars squaring Pluto. And from the 7th all the way up to the start of the 10th, we have that square that Sun and Venus will be making to Saturn. So uh, this is going to be a period of some frustration. So uh, the good aspects to Chiron, that provides some relief. But this week, it may very quickly, we may see about 3 days of frustration, uh, followed by 3 days of escalated tension as a result of Mars square Pluto. So, not the best week. Now, next we get to the first quarter moon, and we have a semi-square between Mars and Saturn. And as I mentioned, we're going to get a lot of hard aspects involving Saturn this month. They don't last that long, but they cause some frustration and delays. And let's see, Mars is now in Taurus. Saturn in Pisces, again, it's this vision we want to make concrete, but there is some difficulty in bringing that about. Mars in Taurus is going to be focused more probably on finances and things you need to sustain life and on holding on to your gains, what you have. We have Sun making a semi-sextile to Uranus. Sun was previously conjunct Uranus and Taurus. So we have some sort of creative endeavor, probably financial, which They're now trying to get off the ground, work out the ideas, uh, the theory behind it, and get things started. So that can be good. Some creative endeavors are beginning. We have Mars semisextile Jupiter. This is going to be a waning or closing semisextile, which might also be good. Uh, Hopefully, this will represent certain conflicts kind of wrapping up, at least to some extent. Uh, so hopefully, there will be an end to these wars and conflicts. All right, Venus is making a square to Neptune in Pisces. So again, there's a little bit of a conflict between these grand visions and the thoughts people are having now. Venus rules the right brain. It's lots of things. It's the pleasure principle. It's the drive to reduce tension. But what creates tension, what releases tension, that results in values of what's bad, what's good, and that gives us our values. And it's all nonverbal. So Venus is connected with the right nonverbal brain, uh, but its thoughts, in a sense, on a nonverbal level, it's somewhat in conflict with this grand vision out here. Uh, but as with all these conflicts, they just last a few days and move on. And Venus is making a quincunx to Pluto. This suggests that individuals are here and there are going to have to make adjustments as a result of pressure from the powers that be, pressure from groups that are now holding power. And let's see, the square of Venus to Neptune is going to be followed by a square of Sun to Neptune. So again, the ideas that people are having, it's in conflict with some grand vision out here. And of course, there could also be misinformation. By the way, the things I have over here, I'm putting them basically in the order through which these aspects become exact. So we'll first see Mars semi-square Saturn become exact, then Sun semi-sextile Uranus becomes exact, and so on. And here you can see the exact dates on which these various aspects become exact. With these aspects involving Neptune, the squares, in addition to being at odds with whatever grand vision is out there, as I said, it could also involve misinformation in extreme cases, things like assassination. Okay, now there are two sign changes this week, which are notable. Venus will be moving into Cancer on June 16th, and the Sun is going to move into Cancer on June 20th. And this will be a shift to uh, away from the abstract thought and ideas and curiosity of Gemini to more of a focus on family and personal security that is represented by Cancer. So focus will change as we get approach the middle of this lunar month, moving away from thinking and ideas to let's just see what we can do to make ourselves secure, protect our families. Okay, and here's another graphical display for the week. You can see a couple of days that Sun is making that square to Neptune, a couple of days that, I'm sorry, Venus squares Neptune, a couple of days that Sun squares Neptune. Mars semisextile, Jupiter. That's in effect for about 4 days. So some some ideas are trying to be enacted. Exactly what it is, hard to say. Now, when we get to the full moon, well, you can see some blue lines in this chart, but here again, I'm using 7.5 degree orbs. When I use 1 degree orbs, uh, I basically just have inconjuncts and a semi-square. So a little bit of tension, a little bit of adjustment this week. And you might look, you can see that Sun, Venus, and Mercury, they have left Gemini. We start out with a whole bunch of planets in Gemini, but now only Jupiter is left there. It will stay there for about a year. But our other planets have moved into Cancer. So again, that's a shift from ideas, thinking, curiosity to just trying to stay secure, protect family. And Venus is making a semi-sextile to Jupiter. So whatever ideas, uh, seeds that were planted when Venus and Jupiter were conjunct, now it's trying to get off the ground with this waxing semi-sextile. Venus wants to implement those ideas, but uh, it's it's more concerned about personal security and family relations at this point. The Sun is making a quincunx to Pluto, so some adjustments have to be made with, again, the powers that be, the groups that are holding power now. Adjustments have to be made with them in order to guarantee personal security. And with Venus making a semi-sextile to Uranus, that creates a little bit of instability. Uranus always tries to break up the existing pattern. It can be inspiration or uh, mental derangements, schizophrenia. But with the semi-square with Uranus, there may be some anxiety related to security issues and having enough resources. Or it could also be some creative schemes now getting off the ground, particularly schemes of a financial nature. And here you can see the dates when these aspects become exact. So this week, uh, which is the week following the full moon, there's not a lot of astrological activity, but the semi-square uh, between Venus and Uranus, that could shake things up a little bit and cause a little anxiety for some. You can see here that's only going to last about a couple of days, second half of June 24th through the first half of June 26th. And semi-sextiles and conjuncts, they're going to be in effect on June 21st and 22nd, and then they're done with. Okay, now we get into the third quarter moon. A little bit more activity and a few good aspects again. Let's see, we have Sun semi-sextile Jupiter. Again, this is a waxing semi-sextile. So ideas that were planted when Sun and Jupiter were conjunct, they're now trying to get off the ground, be implemented. Venus sextile Mars, that is going to be good. Uh, Perhaps arrangements will be made which will provide for people's security while also providing resources for people. Uh, Mars making a semi-square to Neptune. Again, they're grand visions for peace that are having difficulty getting off the ground. This aspect, the semi-square, represents some tension, uh, and this tension could involve financial matters. Jupiter making a semi-square to Chiron, again, this creates a little bit of tension, some irritation, and there is some conflict between some higher visions and ideas, and perhaps uh, either wounding or healing involving warriors out there, or what independent people want to do. Okay, and we have, let's see, Sun semi-square Uranus. Actually, I should have colored this in red. I missed that. That should be in blue or light blue. So here I've got it properly colored in red. Uh, this is going to be a day or two of instability. Again, people's personal security, they may feel it at risk, so that could make people anxious. There could be financial concerns behind that all. We end with Venus trine Saturn, which is going to be a pretty good aspect, and that indicates things finally stabilizing a little bit toward the end of the week and toward the end of this lunar month. Okay, now here are the precise dates and times, at least in Scottsdale, Arizona, for these aspects becoming exact. And notice the dark brown arrows here. I use those whenever planets are going retrograde. Saturn is going to turn retrograde on the 29th, and Neptune goes retrograde on July 1st. Okay, let's go back to a chart for a second. What does that mean? When Saturn and Neptune both turn retrograde in Pisces? Well, the visions these two planets have been involved with, they're going to be rethought a bit. Uh, we've seen things like squares and semi-squares involving these planets, and we've talked about it's hard to enact these grand visions or make them concrete. Well, now those planets are going to go retrograde, and that puts the pause button on things. That hits that pause button where our brains say, well, wait a minute, let's think about this a little bit more. Maybe need to change or adjust our vision somewhat. We have a couple of beneficial aspects which will help release some tension. Venus sextile Mars, and Venus making a nice trine to Saturn. That one is really good. We have just one in conjunct this month. It looks like Sun semi-sextile Jupiter. Yep, that's the only green one I had up here. And then we have some minor irritations from semi-squares. First Mars semi-square Neptune on the 29th, and then on the 30th and the 1st of July, we have first Jupiter semi-square Chiron, then Sun semi-square Uranus. So there's going to be some irritation from the 29th through the 1st. And here you can see another bar graph showing when these aspects will be in effect. And you can see that the Jupiter semi-square Chiron, that is going to be in effect for the entire week. So that could result in more wounding for someone here or there. Jupiter is in Gemini, which has to do with ideas. Chiron is in Aries, which wants independence, its own spiritual enlightenment, its own transcendence. but when things don't work out well, there's wounding that occurs. So there might be one group over here that has some sort of enlightened revelation, but's at odds with the thoughts of others. Hard to say, but this will be in effect all week. So it's a good time to just sort of observe things and see what kind of tensions arise during this last week of the lunar month. Okay, and here is the new moon on July 5th, which starts the next lunar month. These are just the 7.5 degree orb aspects, pretty much. And the good news is there are a lot of sextiles and trines to start the month with. So things might get off to a good start. Uh, we do have Mars will be conjunct Uranus soon. I think it is exactly conjunct on the day that the Republican National Convention begins. So that should be interesting. And then we have Venus square Chiron. Uh, that's close to exact already at the start of this lunar month. So uh, people might feel wounded in some way uh, as a result of this square. There may be actions that are taking which wound people or seem their perception will be that their security is being threatened. Okay, and let's see, we got this little chart which shows you when a lot of these aspects will occur. You can see that at a glance. And then we have this chart, this graph for the whole month, which shows when a lot of aspects will be happening. Now, the program that produces this graph, it only shows an aspect if it becomes exact within that time period. So, for example, we have Neptune pretty close to a sextile to Pluto throughout the entire lunar month, but it doesn't become exact, so it's not being shown here. But I did show that at the beginning using another program to create that. So this also gives you a pretty good overview of the lunar month, and you can see that at the end of the month, that semi-square between Jupiter and Chiron, that is going to be an aspect that lasts the longest, might get some wounding there. Anyway, let me stop sharing. Let's see, the camera had my hand just frozen here for a second, so I hope that didn't come through. Uh, but anyway, that's what the lunar month looks like. As I said at the beginning, it's probably not the best of times. It's also probably not the worst of times. Just kind of a month of a lot of adjustments that have to be made, tensions here and there that flare up, but then they typically last for just a short period of time. Uh, Occasionally some good aspects, but not a whole lot. So just a month of adjustment and dealing with things here and there, but probably not, if not as good as you'd like, also probably not as bad as it could be. So, I should also reiterate, we start out this month, or right before the beginning of the lunar month, we have that very nice small triangle, sort of mini grand trine between Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune. That's going to help. We have the close sextile between uh, Neptune and Pluto that endures throughout the month, and that's going to help. So there are some helpful things, but still a lot of irritations here and there that are short-lived. A lot of adjustments that have to be made. So that is the astrological weather report. I'll do a couple of more reports in which I talk about the lunar month and how it applies to specific countries and specific individuals. So that will give you some more detail on things that you might be interested in. But for now, just remember that, again, this is just a weather report. Uh, what we do with the weather, what actually happens, that depends upon the decisions that we and others make. So, regardless of the weather, if we always make the best possible decision, then we'll always get the best possible outcome. So, keep that in mind. And no matter how stormy things are, uh, practice kindness. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And with that, I'll just say so long and be well. And I hope you enjoy me again for more of these astrological videos. Okay, so long.